Om Triambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushtivardhanam Orvarukamiva Bandhanam Mrityur Mukshiyamamritat. Hello and welcome, wonderful person. Welcome, wonderful people, to In This Very Moment. In this very moment, I decided to continue with the chant that I was chanting in preparation for this just moments before this broadcast was to occur. And that chant, Om Triambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanam Mrityur Mukshiyamamritat, is a Sanskrit chant, and it has to do with when you really need something, when you think that you're really on the precipice of death and that kind of annihilation death, that you call on this. Even as the cucumber is cut from the creeper, which is its vine, there is still this amazing power and hope to know the truth. I want to read something. I opened up a book. I always like to open up books that I've read before, and I call it Dialing for Discourses, like just to see. What was the game? Dialing for Dollars. It was a game show. I don't even know if I ever saw it. I think it was before my time, but I think it's like Dialing for Discourses. So this is a book called Teaching by my guy Mayor Baba, and this is what I pardon me. I've been doing a lot of this for the last day. This is about what's going on. There exists at the present moment a universal dissatisfaction and an indescribable longing for something that will end the terrible chaos and misery that overshadows the world just now. The disorders in the world, I'm going to say that again. The disorders in the world without, like the world around you, the world without, are a reflection of the disorders within. There is now this force, whether you know it as God, Jesus, Buddha, Baba, science, nature, love, and all of the highest light forces of the heavens and the earth, will enable mankind to solve their inner problems by awakening the divine elements in them. By awakening the divine elements in them. And this was written, decades ago. This is something that is been very present in humanity, and specifically right now, this ever-present notion of there is so much love and beauty to be had. There is so much camaraderie. There is so much power. There are so many people doing that really courageous work to look at their lower self, to face those demons and to move forward. There's this quote from a compilation of lectures. Pathwork.org is a 278, I believe, lectures, guided lectures about how to grow, how to know yourself. And some of them have been compiled into a book called Fear No Evil. And I'm pretty sure it's on page 189 of Fear No Evil. And it goes something, or 187. I used to know that exactly. But it goes like this: whatever is in me, whatever is hidden that ought to be out in the open, I want to see it. I commit myself to see it, to seeing it, regardless to the hurt to my vanity. And there's the quote goes on, but it says, because what happens then is therefore I over concentrate on the wrongs of others rather than looking within. And that is that the disorders of the world without are a reflection of the disorders of the world within. Whatever evil is on a continuum. And that evil in the world that we might see or perceive, depending on our perception and the way our constructs go, because people will very much disagree about that, is that when we can see that we have maybe a corresponding note to that which we decry as awful and bad, and we find that within us, then whatever is in me, whatever is hidden that I ought to see, I want it to be out in the open. That ought to be out in the open. I want to see it. I commit myself to seeing it, regardless of the hurt to my vanity, which, by the way, is the pride. That insidious pride, shame, bedfellow seesaw dynamic that keeps us out of dignity and humility, because then we will over-concentrate on the wrongs of others. And it's very seductive to over-concentrate on the wrongs of others. I don't know another human being except for these enlightened masters that don't do that. It's so easy to get lost in that tape. And that's because there's a wonderful book called The Great Sweetening, Life After Thought by Jan Fraser. And it is a profound book, and it's a collection of short essays, some of them 2 or 3 pages. I don't think any one of them are more than 5 pages, but it's about the nature of the mind, and it's the story of the existence of the mind and the ego. And the mind's job is to keep our sense of separateness alive so that the game called creation keeps going. And it will divert us to anguish and keep us in the sensations of anguish rather than the sensations of serenity, because serenity means the ego's eventual demise. But I like to say to my ego, don't worry, you've got lots of time left. You can still decide things. A healthy ego, we need a healthy ego. We need a healthy sense of ourselves. We don't need an overinflated or an underinflated, because that will just have to seesaw back and forth because we seek homeostasis as the creatures that we are. But a healthy ego is subservient to the unconditional love and receives that power and that courage and that encouragement to go forward within ourselves and around ourselves. I just want to ask my technical advisor, Jen August, on the StreamYard. I'm having that issue where my screen goes blank. Could you put in the chat whether you are seeing that or not, the private chat? Because otherwise I will just go on like the soldier of love and light that I am. All right, I'm checking the private chat right now, and it says, she doesn't see the problem, looks clear. Wonderful. Okay, I'm going to go back to doing what I was doing, which is that, by the way, I think that vanity is, and that overinflated ego, and then the underinflated ego, the pride and the shame, thinks that we have to be perfect. This is not a performance. I say that to myself all the time. This is an experience. And when I get quiet beforehand, what would serve? What would be in service in this moment to myself? Because I'm part of the continuum of everything, of the light and the dark and the love and the hate and all of that. We're here on this planet. We have some elements of it because we're all one. And we have some responsibility, but the responsibility, taking that word, the ability to respond to what's within us. I've been reading a lot about codependency and narcissistic personality disorders and malignant narcissism, and how one might get themselves in a situation where they don't see what is really there. And what I've come to know about myself and about being an empath and a healer and someone who also knows that she has some healing of this I'll take care of it, the savior complex, I know that I have lost myself because I lost my superpower. There's a woman named Dr. I think it's Ramoni, and she's been interviewed on Lewis Howes, who his forum is just amazing. And she says what happens is the empath, or the person that dearly cares and loves and can see the greater in everyone, loses one of their important superpowers to maintain their human existence. And that is the responsibility to know what they need first, like the oxygen mask first, and then on others. What happens is it gets backwards. We get seduced into losing ourselves in that kind of environment and being swept away by the skyrockets and what the accolades and the promises of the moment, because we can see someone in wholeness. But when we're not doing our job, and in our intimate relationships, we need to really take it slow. I heard the song yesterday. I was driving to a client's, and it was by Orleans, which is a band from like the 70s. And it was called Love Takes Time. And I think that is like the anthem for the healing codependent and the empath. And to be able to bring into what I want to bring into this session is compassion and the different types of compassion. That chant that I was singing just now, I want to read to you what the end definition of it is that may I be liberated from the attachment to perishable things, to those things that are impermanent, which, by the way, are people as well, so that I am not separated from the perception of my immortality, the ever-present, indestructible, imperishable nature of love and my true essence. Because when we feel separated from that, then we will attach on, and then we will be blindsided, or we will then have this feeling of loss of autonomy and our responsibility, our ability to respond, and we'll just react. So it is one of the delightful, the delightfully misguided attributes of really huge loving people is this business of compassion being a loss of ourselves. From the Abraham Hicks lineage, there's this explanation of what Jesus meant by turn the other cheek. It doesn't mean turn to get re-engaged and manipulated and hurt over and over again, like the military, like, thank you, sir, may I have another, or whatever it is in fraternity life. I don't want to mind the military if they don't do that, but I'm pretty sure they have. So that knowing that, oh, I just lost my train of thought. I mean, I asked myself this question today, and I'll ask this to you. Do you ever ask yourself, am I okay? Am I doing okay? I mean, it is something to ride the roller coaster of this chaos, as Baba was saying, and knowing that it comes from this within ourselves, that at the present moment there is a universal dissatisfaction and an indescribable longing for something that will end the terrible chaos and misery that overshadows the world. And in those moments, we can have that moments of that overshadowing misery. So I'm going to go back to compassion because I'm pretty sure that's what I was talking about, and talk about the idiotic compassion. There's one type of compassion. I mean, isn't that, Buddhists will also say idiot compassion, but the way I've learned it and interfaced with it is idiotic compassion. Then there's tender compassion. And then there's fierce compassion, 3 different types of compassion. I'm sure there's a bazillion different types of compassion, but I'm going to talk about those 3. I noticed that I have tears. I mean, it's just such a tender thing. My body as a healer can feel what's going on in the world and can feel it. But what happens is when I get lost in my own personality and not connected to my soul infusing my personality, my body was just feeling the tears were strolling down, and I didn't even feel the tears until I literally felt them with my hand. And then I was connected in to the universal suffering, and then my own that I've experienced in my lifetime. And so what I do with that, because I'm sure you experience that as well, what I do with that is then come to this notion first of tender compassion, and we'll do the other more sensational compassions later. I want to read to you, there's a woman, a PhD named Kristen Neff, and I've seen her TED Talks, and she wrote a book. I want to read the title to you. It's called Fierce Self-Compassion: How Women Can Harness Kindness to Speak Up, Claim Their Power, and Thrive. And there's some stuff, she described tender compassion. I'm just going to read one sentence to you. Tender compassion involved being with ourselves in an accepting way, comforting ourselves, reassuring ourselves that we aren't alone, and being present with our pain. Being present with our pain. And I'd say not indulging it and giving it more, but not denying it. On the continuum of fear no evil, like what evil is or results from numbing off from our feelings. Because when our soul comes into this body, we come here to feel. I don't know that in the spirit realms or the higher realms that we have bodies. I know we have astral bodies, but I don't know that we have this kind of dense feeling that we have. And when we deny our feelings or cut off our feelings, we're saying no to our own incarnation. And then when we're denying our own feelings, or we're medicating them or fleeing from them with force and collapse or whatever it might be, or going on that talk to blame others, like over concentrating on the wrongs of others, what happens is then we numb off to the feelings of others. And we can act in ways that cause such harm because we are so desperate to get out of whatever it is we don't like, or we judge as bad, or we blame others for. And then when that happens, then we can actually commit acts of overt evil, where we lie to get our own needs met, where we hurt other people just to preserve our own pride or our own ego, where we will manipulate and then coming to actual physical violence or the threats of physical violence. That's the continuum of evil. So this tender compassion, I'm going to read it again from Kristen Neff, Neff. Tender compassion involves being with ourselves in an accepting way, comforting ourselves, reassuring ourselves that we aren't alone, and being present with our pain. So I'll say to myself, I'm not alone. I have my higher self. I have the greater. I have hordes of people who love me. I feel blessed beyond words to have the cohort of, I mean, I can't even count the number of people that I can say are of this kind of strength that have taken the courage to look within so that they can be in relationships that uplift each other and everyone, that can be stable and secure and honest and growing and love-filled and visionary. I mean, the highest light visionaries, the most deeply caring people that then can come together. So I know I'm not alone. I have hordes of people that I have been gifted with and gifted with the presence to cultivate in this lifetime. And I can also be present with my pain and present with my job, my calling on this planet, to respond, to feel it, to hear it, but not to indulge in it and continue to go on. And that's tricky business, not to indulge, because as Linda Ronstadt sings, poor, poor, pitiful me, it's a thing. Which I'm going to digress a little because I want to read the definition, the classic like Wikipedia and Merriam-Webster definition of compassion. I always think like I would take that word apart, meaning like with, and passion with passion. So to care with passion, that's not actually the root. Well, maybe it is, but from Wikipedia, it says sympathetic pity and concern for the sufferings or misfortunes of others. And when I read that, my spider sense started tingling, and I was like, ooh, when I'm in pity, I am putting someone in a victim place, whether it's a child or an adult. When I think that when I pity them for the situation they're in, and maybe I can feel that, but I feel I can do nothing about it, so I just pity them. What I'm actually doing, this is my feeling of how I've interpreted pity, is that I'm making them an eternal victim, saying that they don't have within them that same higher power that I have and everyone has, and they don't have available to them the highest light forces of the heavens and the earth. And regardless of the situation in their home with their parents or grandparents, or whatever the situation is of their caring or their teachers, or that might not be of the highest light, that they can access that within them. And when I pity them, I see even a child as lesser. It doesn't mean that the world doesn't need to have fierce accountability and to take care of those actions that are so overtly painful and evil. But some of these things are not codified, that happen to people on this planet and happen to children. And so I can feel the sympathy for, oh, that's hard, the way I have felt suffering in the world, but especially when it comes to children, because to see them in their eternal soul and to see them being able to awaken to their power and not be able to succumb to any of the manipulations of a parent that may be ill, or a parent that may be okay. I mean, good and bad are just part of the equation. I say this to all of my parents that are wanting to conceive or pregnant or birthing or after and raising children, is that the definition of a parent includes good and bad. I say you're going to be a magnificent parent, you're going to be a terrible parent, you're going to be mediocre in between. The mark of whether you're going to be satisfied in a parent that is actually going to do their job, which is to be a representative light of the wholeness, to take those daring dives into themselves and into the greater, and to be able with humility and dignity see where they have inflicted harm, whether it is non-intentional or intentional. It really doesn't matter, that they're going to emulate a soul, a spirit with the courage, willingness, optimism, strength of character, and humility to wake up and to apologize in a way that isn't even more manipulative. Because a lot of people apologize in a manipulative way because they want someone to tell them it's okay. That's not their job. It's that apology just comes with that freedom to feel. So to come out of that pity and to come into the compassion for the human experience. So I'm going to read you where it is. I love finding the origin of the word. I think it's called etymology. The origin of the word compassion comes from the Old French and Middle English, and then from the ecclesiastical Latin. First of all, if you've read my Galactic Council of Women, All Genders Welcome website, it is full of chock up full of amazing, incredible energy. Read it just for a healing. And I talk about ecclesiastical when I say what each one of those words were chosen. Galactic Council of Women, All Genders Welcome was chosen for the power of each one of those words, and then strung together because they were never strung before in the existence of humanity until I received the inspiration and intuition to create something brand new, to shake up the pride shame dynamic, to access the power of the feminine, and to bring together a council, which for me, one of the definitions of council is ecclesiastical. And my whole life, I don't know, I feel like I have some sort of automatic tick. Whenever I hear the word ecclesiastical, I want to raise my right arm and say, ecclesiastical. And I say, I see the colors purple and green, which is the crown and the heart chakra in many traditions as well. So this ecclesiastical Latin, thank you for following me. Remember that I think it still is out there. There's a cartoon called The Family Circus. And what they would do is they would put the dots of where the kids went all day and the parents were cleaning up. That is how my mind, and I think many minds, work. So this family circus that's going on in here now will take us back to the Latin word, which is it's compassio. And then we've added the end, which comes from compati, to suffer with. Compassion means to suffer with. Also, spider sense as a recovering codependent, tingling, and as a healer too. So when I say that I can feel the suffering of humanity, in shamanic tradition and in my shamanic training, which is a shaman is someone who can exist in both realms and bring healing and the bridge between the two. And I have been trained in that for decades as well. And it's always a growing thing. But a shaman's job or a healer's job is to merely touch their tongue on the sickness so they can get a flavor of what it is without taking it on their whole self. Because two sufferings don't make a whole person. That misery loves company is what holds us back. It holds us back as a planet when we complain about other people and we complain about what's going on and we feel the rush of that. That is a recipe to get stuck in that kind of energy that doesn't then propel us forward. So I'm going to say compati, to suffer with, means to just understand the suffering, not to get lost in it. And I think that the Merriam-Webster dictionary, I don't know why I can't say the Merriam today and Webster together. I feel like I have some sort of accent when I say it. This definition, I think, is really great. It is the sympathetic consciousness of others' distress together with a desire to alleviate it. Thank you, Miriam, and thank you, Webster. It is the definition of compassion, according to them, is the sympathetic consciousness of others' distress together with the desire to alleviate it. That's just great, the desire to alleviate it, and to know the difference between caretaking and service. I have had to learn that in my healership and in the codependent healing and in relationship healing, and I'm learning it in this moment, is that there is such a difference between taking care of, which is actually saying you're not able to, and serving, which is not always doing what someone else wants, and letting someone come out of their own patterns that they've gotten themselves in, not cleaning up their messes, not trying to order their chaos so that they don't feel comfortable or that you can survive. So it is something just to be able to have that sympathetic consciousness, which is an awareness of that, of the distress of others on the planet, as well as our own, because we haven't numbed off to our own, with a desire to alleviate it, to elevate it, to lighten it, to merge it into that consciousness of the eternal self. So I learned when I was training to be a Buddhist, because I got to do that as well and have that as part of my beautiful experiences and trainings in this lifetime. I was taught from my Lama, my teacher, this phrase that always stuck with me is that compassion is love tempered by wisdom. So it's that universal love. You love so fully, but then you have wisdom. I know that I can lose my wisdom when my wounds, I'm not attending to them responsibly. And I know that others can do that as well. So that love tempered with wisdom. And then I was receiving teachings from Losang Samten, who is the head of the Chenrezig Tibetan Buddhist Center in Philadelphia. And I also think in LA, I think he is in charge of 4 of them across the world. He was a personal assistant to the Dalai Lama for like 25 years. And he is or was, I don't know if he still is because I haven't seen him for a couple of years since COVID, but the lead mandala, the sand artist, like the creations that he has made, those mandalas that the Buddhists make, these elaborate, huge, most beautiful creations. And the second that they're completed, they whoosh, destroy them. Like kids do with sandcastles at the beach, just not to let us get attached to anything, no matter how beautiful it is. And he said something in one of the teachings I received a couple of years ago is that love and wisdom has to then move into action. That compassion without action is then really just a nice thought. It doesn't move things forward. There's one of the many lineages. I have spent my life and my the grand intellect that I was given and my lawyer brains, because I was a trial lawyer for years, to this world of the universal truths, like what is real happiness, what's health, what's prosperity, what's harmony, and how to be a force for that in my own being in this monkey mind, as the Buddhists would say, and for everyone and everything. And one of my teachers from the pranic healing lineage, I did not know him in the body, but I still consider him as a teacher. He says that what's the purpose of love? Love without power there's no purpose to it. I mean, it's lovely, but love without power, which he talks about big chakras, like a really healthy, vibrant system, equals service. And that is what, when we awaken to true love and we have it, we then can serve, not caretake, not even help. Helping can be that pity. You got to be really clear about that, but to bring it into true service. So love without power. I mean, it's a nice thing, but it's not helping you evolve or the all of us that are part of this oneness in this great game of creation. I'm going to tell a story now of one of the most difficult situations I had with respect to knowing the difference between service and helping. I was in India in 2011, I believe, and we went to a place called Varanasi. That was the original Indian name, but when the British Empire took over, it was named Benares, Benares, and now it's Varanasi. Get back to the original language. And we were in Varanasi, and we went to the place where Buddha, like the Buddha, had an ashram, a beautiful, expansive place. And Varanasi, at the time that I was there in 2011, was it was the type of environment. It was said that every one of the avataric incarnations of the Christ consciousness go to dip their feet in the Ganges at Varanasi. And at that time, the Ganges of Varanasi was extraordinarily polluted, as was the air. I remember one day it sprinkled rain, and the coat that I was wearing was just, first of all, the rain smelled like urea and feces, and it was just brown all over us and our faces. And but incredible spiritual ceremonies as well. I remember we took a boat ride down the Ganges, and I said that experience of Varanasi, and we were there for New Year's Eve day and New Year's Eve night, and the day after, I believe 2 days after, was like a Steven Spielberg movie combined with a Stephen King novel. I mean, it broke my brain. That trip, that part of that trip to India to Varanasi broke my mind. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And the contrast, like the extreme contrast of this incredible spiritual devotion to the one and some of the most heinous human conditions and that I could ever imagine, and environmental conditions that I could imagine. And we took a bus trip to the outskirts of Varanasi to a place with the Buddha's ashram, which I don't remember the name of. And we were told very clearly by our guides and by the places that we stayed with we should not ever, ever, ever give anyone that's begging money, especially children. They are kept in hideous condition to get money. And I've seen some movies about that. And I believe Slumdog Millionaire was helpful for that as well. So that was, and I know from the notion of service that would just perpetuate the cycle of keeping children in terrible situations to beg for money. So we walked from the bus directly into what was like a holodeck in Star Trek. It was from, I will say, filth and chaos into pristine purity. I felt that I had entered into literally another world, a realm, and it was expansive and it was beautiful. And it had the structures that were still there of the time of Buddha, speaking and teaching and meditating and being and sharing. And we were there for a couple hours, and it was an extraordinary experience. In this moment, in this very moment, I remember this feeling of, I can say I felt like I was eternal. I didn't feel limited by my Cindy form. And then it came time to leave, and we got in line to go out to the bus. And a woman came up to me holding a baby that looked to me about 8 weeks old. And the baby was listless, and the baby's nose was crusted with green and brown mucus. And the baby had just, the arms were flailing, and the baby had just enough energy just to softly moan. Whew. And the mother was saying, because what she knew to say in English was, "Lady, money for my baby." And she took the baby's arm that was listless and was flinging it against my belly. "Lady, money for my baby." And I looked over at her and the baby, and I looked at that sight. And I then turned my gaze straight, and she did it maybe 3 or 4 more times. And all I did was took every name of God and every prayer and every angel and everything that I could muster to stand there and not wail or scream or give money or do anything. I mean, to stand in like that pity for a child, to stand in the face of seeing that child as an eternal soul. And then when there was also a gaggle of kids, and one of like the 9-year-old was holding a toddler or 1-year-old, and they were begging for money. And when we didn't give them money, and they're banging on the bus, and the bus started to pull away, they all started to run. And the 9-year-old holding the baby just dropped him or her from that height to the cement, and that child started crawling with bloody knees frantically after the group. I mean, sweet Lord, that was some great healing, and is continuing to be. And I share that with you so the souls of all of those people involved, from the people that perpetuated those heinous acts to the souls that were there, whether they're in the body or not, we are going to move from the tender compassion into fierce compassion. I have been feeling fierce and ferocious for the last month about the state of the world that would lead myself, those that I love, the situations that I was in, and the planet to suffer unnecessarily. That kind of fierceness that comes from the mother bear, the parent bear, that says, "Oh, well, I feel this, but no more on my watch." That will not villainize anyone, as seductive it is to do. Because as I would say to my children when they were treated harshly or mean, is that happy people don't do that to other people. Happy people do not inflict that kind of harm. Don't say those cruel, harsh things. Don't play those games of elevating and then shunning. They just don't. They don't get off on talking to other people about how bad they are. And so I know that I've done that at times like this because I'm not happy. I'm not secure in myself. And now I'm coming into that fierce compassion for whatever it is like that I'm rising to and that we're rising to on this planet. I'm going to read again what Baba had said about that, is that There is coming to us the ability to enable mankind to solve their inner problems by awakening the divine elements within them. That's what in this very moment, and all of what I have been inspired to create and have been devoting my resources and time and gathering like-spirited souls and the highest minded people in whether it is in finance or in banking or in marketing or in social media or in spirituality or in agriculture, whatever it might be, gathering people together from the purity of those divine elements of the essential nature, because we have to heal the sickness from the cause of it, not just deal with the results of the infection. So I want to read what Kristen Neff said about fierce compassion. Fierce compassion involves acting in the world to alleviate suffering. I think she read Merriam-Webster. Webster. Why am I saying Webster? Merriam-Webster. Cindy. You know, when I was young, we didn't have the internet, obviously, and we had these huge treatises. One was the dictionary, was that big. One was the encyclopedia, which was that big. And then one was the thesaurus. And that's where we went for our book reports. We didn't have the whole Encyclopedia Britannica. We just had the big one. So fierce compassion, what she says, it tends to involve protecting, providing for, and motivating ourselves. Sometimes we need to stand tall and say no, to draw boundaries and to fight injustice. Now, I'm going to tweak that Cindy style. Yes, fight injustice, but do it from the energy of advocating for justice, advocating for the light. We can get seduced. The best-minded people that are as right can be, or think they're as right can be, can get so manipulated by the ego or the affirmation of separateness by fighting injustice and feeling the rush of that, rather than advocating for the light. And I say over and over again, you can do the same things with the same energies, but you're in mastery of it from the eternal, impersonal, and personal loving divine. And then you're going to elevate rather than to, I say, you know, if you smite someone, you're going to get smart, because I like smitten, but that is really true with smitten. I think that when someone is smitten, I was recently smitten, I was smited. I was smart because I was then being overcome and not listening to my natural wisdom and my spider sense and my slow, Cindy, watch where you are coming out of yourself. So advocate for the light. And she goes on to say, or we may need to say yes to ourselves to do what's needed to be happy rather than subordinating our needs to those of others. That's where the service versus caretaking thing comes in. And she goes on to say, if we're stuck in a bad situation or habits that are harmful, it means doing something different, not because we're unacceptable as we are, but because we care. You know, caring is different than caretaking. I think that's pretty much genius. So this fierce compassion, that is why I'm going out and doing what I'm doing and listening to the call, and will call myself the Empress of Infinite Supply and Radiant Love, because why not? Why not do that? Why not give myself something that I know can be joyful, imaginative, and forward moving, and I can really have healthy dignity about it. All right, so what is really this idiotic compassion? I know idiotic compassion as letting someone walk all over you, as giving someone chances over and over and over again. The research of Dr. Ramani, I think that's her name, but again, look up healing narcissism and all of that. She's the expert. She says that when you're going into second and third chances, that is probably not forgiveness. If it's the same behavior over and over again, it's probably like that idiotic compassion where you're just not reading the signs, and you're attached to something you think you need because you don't feel adequate as yourself, which leads you prey to predators and manipulations. And so that kind of idiotic compassion I'm going to read to you now what Pema Chodron says. She's an amazing woman and healing force in the world, and her books are incredible. I've read many of them. I've heard her talk many times. She's a Buddhist, and she talks about enemies of compassion. So this is this is from what is this from? It is from Just Dharma is where I got this from. She says the third enemy, near enemy of compassion, is idiot compassion. This is so amazing. This is when we avoid conflict and protect our good image by being kind when we should definitely say no, or whatever we think kind is. Compassion doesn't only imply trying to be good. When we find ourselves in an aggressive relationship, we need to set clear boundaries. I want to digress to something compassion, she said, doesn't only imply trying to be good. Good and bad are in duality, and they're a measurement of judgment. What we really want to be is that kind of impersonal love. Love is not like. Love is inspired by the spirit. Love has the wisdom of the universe in it. It is very intuitive. It's not based on doing good acts so people can tell you how good you are and having to be validated all the time and to be giving praise and feeling elated. It's not that. Good, really, in its truest sense that we want to follow are those attributes of the infinite love, which are generosity of spirit, compassion, willingness, strength, joy. I would say self-awareness. Just those aspects of oneness, not so much the acts. So she says, back again, I'll say, when we find ourselves in an aggressive relationship, we need to set clear boundaries. The kindest thing we can do for everyone concerned is to know when to say enough. In the name of not shutting our heart, we let people walk over us. It is said that in order to not break our vow of compassion, she's talking about Buddhists, we have to learn, I'm going to say that again. It is said that in order not to break our vow of compassion, we have to learn to stop aggression and draw the line. Like the vow of compassion, like that is a universal divine love attribute that we have to know when to draw the line. And she goes on to say, there are times when the only way to bring down barriers is to set boundaries. And I also know boundaries as knowing what you need to live healthy and whole and to be in service. And it's a tricky game. Welcome, Earthling, as I always like to say. That's why we need the tender compassion, because maybe we think we're having fierce compassion or tender compassion and it's idiotic, like a shell game. I mean, which compassion is it? But I have this on my refrigerator that says that self-compassion is more important than self-improvement. And self-compassion, where you can really see yourself and be with your pain, and then to motivate ourselves to take steps, whether it's in therapy or in relationship or in recovery or in healership or joining other like-spirited people or cultivating friendships and family relationships where they are going to, in their wholeness, call you on your bullshit, call you on your victim consciousness, call you on your projection, and lovingly say, hey, where's your part in this? What are you doing about this? And how might that be affecting others? I mean, that, and then the ability to go move through that kind of messiness with such respect and reverence. That's what I was saying earlier. I am so grateful to have a host, a veritable cornucopia, a plethora of people that will reflect to me in my life. Hey, Cindy, it sounds like you're getting on that, soundtrack of blame. Where's your part in this? Or having someone that will help me take a deep dive into myself to heal those originating wounds. Like one of my originating wounds that I've just had the blessing to bring to such light is thinking that I need to prove to anyone, including my own mind, that I'm lovable, beautiful, worthy, wantable. And having that notion of thinking I have to prove it and there's some sort of pride in showing that I am will lead me prey to the shallow or non-lasting praises of others. I want to read something to you now that is, I think for anyone that that has compassion and empathy and sympathy and wants to alleviate the suffering of the world and has that in them, regardless of what they do for a living or not for a living in their own home in their prayers and meditations, which are powerful, powerful because we're all connected. I read this in 2011. I get these calendars from the Baba community, and this was the quote on the back. And I keep this on my desk, and I keep this in my mind's eye to help me and my ego not get all balled up. I tell people that the ego really can have its way with you when you're doing really good things, because those will just be gold chains rather than iron chains. You have to, give that up to something greater. So I'm going to bring this to conclusion saying this: do whatever needs to be done. And of course, this is Mayor Baba said this. Do whatever needs to be done, but do it as a spiritual being, as one who knows they are divine by nature and unlimited with the whole of life. In essence, do it as if you are doing it for God. However, God, Jesus, Buddha, Baba, science, nature, love, Allah, Baba. Do it with equal consideration for the interests of all concerned, for God is equally in each. Do it with utmost concentration, yet with utter detachment for the results of the action. Leave the fruit of the action to God. Do it as if it were the most important thing in the universe, yet let it be destroyed or ignored or ridiculed without concern, or let it be praised without elation. Leave the response to God. Do it, in short, as if you were not doing it all, but as if I, meaning Baba, or God were doing it through you. That, dear wonderful person and dear wonderful people, is the recipe to not let your ego bind you in the good or bad of your personality. When we immediately, we give it with utmost concentration, and yet we detach from the results of the action. We have faith in those people that we're serving. We have faith in whatever it is to let that go on their own. And that way we don't enmesh ourselves. As a healer, I know when I finish a healing session, when I finish this live stream that you can receive in the Eternal Now, I disconnect any cords that might have come from, I didn't do a really good job, or I did a really great job. Either one of those things, iron chains, gold chains. Like when I puff up to say, look how great I, Cindy, the personality, am, without the awareness of the divine essence that I'm magnificent, because look at what the universe, what God, Great Spirit, Jesus, Buddha, Baba, science, nature, love, Allah, Goddess, universe, higher self, higher power made, and I can own my magnificence as part of this creation, then it doesn't bind me. It doesn't bite me in the ass and screw me up the patootie, and it won't then lead to others, their lower selves being enmeshed with me. And I've had to learn that lesson so strongly. Recently, I'd say the last 10 years and the last decade plus and going. I mean, probably since 2011. So it's probably 11 years now. Thank you. 11:11, the gates of heaven and earth opening. And I offer everything that I do for the upliftment of you personally and humanity. And when we do that, it's a little, it's not entirely altruistic. It's not entirely because I'm part of everything. I know that when you offer your day, your night, everything for the highest and healthiest healing for yourself and for all, you have the resources of the heavens and the earth coming to you. Imagine every guardian angel for someone like you or like me that might think they need someone to tell them how great they are to feel good, or will feel terrible when someone tells me how terrible I am. Imagine everyone, which that's a lot of us here on the planet, by the way, imagine their guardian angels rushing to help my guardian angel in the group, because then there'll be more of that light energy in the world for my charge to take care of. It's a very beautiful, noble way to collaborate in this business of up-leveling of ourselves. I like to say one of my personal missions is to merge the heart of humanity with the soul of money or power, what people agree as power, to create a better life for you and for all. And I so wholeheartedly, whole spiritedly, whole bodily, whole mindly invite you to join me to get the Prosper Plus app. There is a free training on there. There's free, you'll get all of these things, prosperity on the go. Prosper means to grow, to flourish, to be strengthened in our well-being. And then the Prosper Plus Premium, which is receiving more of me channeling everything that I've learned and learning and plus in the style which I have, and to be able to join a community of willing souls, to join a council, which is just really an energetic one. It's an energetic organization that when people lend their presence, they get let go of the notion of duty and pressure in the artificial form, and send just a few squiggles into the currency, into the economic system that we call money, to elevate themselves in the world and allow it to come back, allowing the circulating infinite supply, the truth of the infinite supply of the universe to come to them and everyone, so we stop competing, so children can stop starving for no reason, stop killing each other for no reason, and all of the things we do and we feel, especially right now in all this chaos, when our seeming power seems to be eroded to meet our needs plus. Our needs. Oh, dear, compassionate, fiercely, tenderly, and sometimes idiotically compassionate ones. Let's just go. That true forgiveness does not mean being a doormat. True forgiveness means detaching from the energies of the actions that kept us small and engaged with other lower vibrational energies, and releasing ourselves and releasing those to deal with those issues with the higher self that they have available to them if they so choose in this lifetime or another. None of our beeswax, not our circus, not our monkeys, and move forward with what we can attend to. In this very moment, I'm feeling fiercely compassionate. Love, power, and blessings, dear wonderful person. Mwah.